Welcome, everybody, to a very interesting episode of this Uncanny Earth. Tonight's episode is about the Syrian conflict. All opinions expressed via this Uncanny Earth are just that. They are the host's opinions. So understand that this will be a very heavy topic and we may run a little bit over. So, welcome. As always, I am your host, Robert Solomon. To my right, which would probably be to his left, is Spider, and below us, but not beneath us, is the one and only Stephen, the intern. Gentlemen, welcome to a very, very interesting episode of This Uncanny Earth. It has been roughly 10 or so days of Syrian conflict, which led up to the removal of President Bashir al Assad in Syria, being deposed, running off to Russia with his tail between his legs, as a newer player enters the stage for Syria. Gentlemen, before we get started on the Syrian conflict, I know Spider wanted to talk about the latest hubbub over in Jersey. And that, my friends, is SUV sized drones flying all around New Jersey and scaring the inhabitants and changing times on clocks. So, Spider, give us the rundown on that.
Basically what happened is, I believe it was 3 days ago, maybe, it started making big news. It's been going on for longer than that, though. It's been going on for maybe a week to 2 weeks before anybody
Yeah.
really picked up on it and it got passed around in the news. But there's been, and there's still unclear how many of these drones there are. According to some reports, people have said that there's up to 50. Some people say there's 5. Some people think that there's only one, and it's been traversing areas rapidly enough that it keeps getting mistaken for a different drone. It is the size of a car. It's got a 6-foot diameter, which is huge for a drone. You don't get that with residential stuff. You don't get cousin Joe out back like, "Oh, I got a drone for Christmas. Let's fly it around." You don't
Yep.
get that kind of stuff in that size for people to just buy off the shelf. And not only are they kind of flying around strange areas, mostly along one of the rivers. I don't remember what the river is called, but it's a particular river um, in New Jersey, and it's also been near 2 key areas: a military base, a military armory, and a golf course owned by upcoming President-elect Trump, and where he's been actually during some of this drone stuff. Like, he's been hanging out there recently for whatever reason. Maybe he had stuff to do in New York for other related things. But when people notice them or approach them or look at them for too long, they shut their lights off and they show up in the dark. So then you can't really see them very well. So, and they've been causing a lot of things. Like you mentioned, they've been supposedly messing with radio signals.
Yeah.
Um, they haven't been buzzing people, like they haven't been flying too close to people. They've just been kind of static in an area and then flying off to do whatever. And the reason it's relevant, possibly, to what we're going to talk about tonight is because Republican, is he a senator or a representative? Can I remember who's who? But he's a Republican Congressman, Jeff Van Drew, who was a Democrat and then he switched to Republicans last year, 2 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, maybe longer than that. I don't remember how long it's been. I'm going to be full of little, like, I don't remember for some of these things because at the time they didn't seem all that important. But he claimed initially that they were from Iran and that they had been launched by an Iranian mothership of some kind. He didn't elaborate on what that was, whether it was an aircraft or a helicopter or what it was supposed to be. Meanwhile, the FBI and various other people have said, no, we don't believe that they're from a foreign body. We don't believe they're from a foreign nation. We don't believe they're from another country. They're from somewhere here. But they really don't know, to the point that they have been asking people, all the residents in the area who've cited them, to send them in all of the picture and video and everything that they can get at these things because they don't know why they're there, which is kind of concerning. But again, the link to Iran is going to be something that might become important later. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But it is going to be something that we're going to examine later.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, the car-sized um the car-sized drone spotted over New Jersey, and actually they've actually been sighted over Philly as well. Philadelphia
Mm.
was the latest in the places to be spotted for um, this action. So yes, it will be interesting to see where China sits on this because I think China might have something to do with this. If Iran is where Iran is, but Iran's looking like they're going to be hurting now with the Syria conflict pretty much resolved and Bashir al-Assad removed from his place of power, who had a great relationship with Iran, um, and Iran itself was funneling weapons and things like that through Syria into Lebanon, and then from Lebanon there, and that's why Israel has been bombing the heck out of
Yeah,
Lebanon and
we're gonna
Syria,
connect some of those dots.
and yeah, and that's the thing is like, I'm a very, I think that Israel needs to stay out of this one, sit this one out, champ, sit like the U.S. Sit this one out, champ. This isn't for you. This isn't for them. Sit this one out. You have enough weapons. You have enough war machines. You don't need more. You don't need more. And I get it. You want to destroy, but it's not your country. You don't own Syria. You've never owned it. You don't need to own it. We don't need to own it. Obama caused enough problems and Bush caused enough problems in the Middle East. We don't need more problems in the Middle East. So
I just have one question about that, though.
please.
My understanding was that the power vacuum that was created has a lot of terrorist groups vying for power. So
ISIS.
why should we? So my theory was I actually thought we should go in and take over, if for no other reason than just to prevent a terrorist group from gaining more power.
It's none of our business.
Okay.
That's how I look at it. It's none of our business. We have enough business here. We're sending ridiculous amounts of money to the Ukraine, another skirmish we should have never been involved in. I will 100% say that to the death. We don't need to be involved in these things. The U.S. is a warmongering society that gets its jollies off taking from the Middle East.
Yes.
We can
100%.
look at the Iraq War. If you guys want proof for that, they never found the weapons of mass destruction that they were looking for because there was none to be found. We just wanted to remove the power that was there. We did it in Latin America and funnel drugs in. So we have to really understand that this is something that we don't need to be a part of. If they ask us to be a part of it, sure, we'll help out as best as we can. But if they don't ask us, it's none of our business. It's none of Israel's business. I get their concern that they're so close to Syria, so something could pop off. But I think this is a situation where you got to let the Syrians handle their own. They just opened up Sindaia prison, which was the slaughterhouse, a human slaughterhouse, where they would do unmistakable things to people, wicked and evil things. We all talk about the horrendous things that go on in the world, but that prison was the worst of the worst, and Bashir al-Assad was on, I forget who was getting interviewed by, but they asked him about that. And he said, he goes, have you been to the prison? And he goes, I'm in the palace. Why would I be in the prison? And that's when you kind of know that Bashir al-Assad probably wasn't a great guy. Probably wasn't a good human being. Probably was a very poor human being, to be perfectly honest. But let's break down some of this timeline here. I think that's going to be what's most important here. And I want to start with where we're at today in this point in time with Syria. So on November 24th or on November 27th, 2024, a coalition of Syrian opposition groups that were led by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which is like an amalgam of different groups, some terrorists, some non-terrorists, that were all sort of funneled together. to make one group, to make one impacting group.
A
Uh,
lot like the Islamic State.
yeah, very, very much.
Very, very similar.
Yeah, very much a similar vein. And so on December 8th, 2024, a few days ago, honestly, they captured Damascus after Bashar al Assad's forces withdrew. And then they announced the collapse of Assad's regime. And so this group is actually led by one Abu Muhammad al Julani, who was a military chief and official leader since October 2017. Now, Abu Muhammad was actually part of Al Qaeda for a very long time. He was a noted Al Qaeda operative, to which, obviously we probably already knew that. A lot of times I think that we get, I don't necessarily think that Al Qaeda as a whole is the worst group. I think there's a lot of interesting parts, much like the Taliban. A lot of people don't know that the Taliban were basically created to keep the United States away from the poppy fields in Afghanistan. They were started to keep us away because the drug trade in the United States is a multi-billion-dollar industry. If you don't think the United States funnels drugs and weapons into this country, you'd be telling yourself a fairy tale. We only need to look to the Latin American overthrowing of different governments by the United States um, that were the precursor to crack cocaine being brought in and Lyndon Baines Johnson creating the projects. Poor communities suffered. It's a very much a fascinating study into how CIA ops work. But in this case, the Syrian conflict's been going on for a very, very long time. The Syrian conflict itself dates all the way back to, let me check here, 2011 under this was a while back. This is when protesters were starting to march um, into Damascus, into Aleppo, two of the biggest cities. Damascus, and just for clarification, Damascus is one of the oldest, if not the oldest, still inhabited city in the world. We are talking a city that was in the Bible. We're talking about a city that was mentioned before the Bible. These are things that were mentioned.
Never been abandoned, never been left. It's
Never.
continuously inhabited since ancient times before we had a lot of written history.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing that we have
It's
to
a big
understand.
deal.
Going into this, Syria is a big player in the historical world stage. You don't have one of the oldest cities in the world for nothing. So, and the thing a lot of people don't understand about Syria is there are multiple powers vying for control. You have the Kurds, you have the Arabs, you have the Muslims, you have some Christians in there too. You have a diverse group of people that are, looking for ways to obtain power. And I want to point to something that Stephen proposed earlier. It is going to create a power vacuum, whether we like it or not. Anytime a ruler is deposed, it creates a power vacuum. I am wondering, I think that he said he was going to Giuliani was going to turn over power to a prime minister. I don't think he wants to be the leader that will tell in days to come. Right now, it seems like they're focused on getting people out of these prisons. They're getting they got to the white level of Sendaya prison, and they were moving into the red level. Now, the prisoners in these prisons are political dissidents, more so political dissidents, because Bashar al-Assad, he massacred probably 350 to 400,000 people. In some of these conflicts, too, the highest death tolls weren't the fighters, it was the civilians, because a lot of times people were just getting killed. This is very much a authoritarian Ba'ath Party, which is a far left movement that was, hidden with the authoritarian ideology and complexity. And so we have the Arab Spring in on this too, which happened in Egypt. Back, I think 2011, probably even before that, all under the watch of our President Obama at the time. And we saw what he did to Yemen and places like that, and increased the attacks on the war on Syria, um, in terms of us getting involved. This is why I'm not a fan of us policing the world, and I will stick to that because I don't think it's a good thing. I also believe that, and we'll get into this a little bit more when we talk about the past and what Spider is going to bring up. But right now, it's looking like Syria is going to, obviously right now the people there, they're suffering, and the funny thing is, I haven't seen, when the Ukraine was invaded by Russia, everybody was change your this to Ukraine, change that to Ukraine, do this with Ukraine, do that with Ukraine. And I'm not saying that conflict isn't important. A lot of people, innocent people, are dying on both sides of that conflict. And it does, Chernobyl sits in the Ukraine. And if that water supply gets poisoned, it would go throughout Europe. The food that Africa gets a lot of the time is from the Ukraine. So there's a lot of things there. Do I think we should be giving them billions of dollars? No, I do not. Not in the simple slightest heck do I think they should get any money from us. But Syria doesn't get the same level of respect, and I often wonder why. But then I think it's because of where it's situated, where it plays out in the Middle East. Because I think a lot of times Americans look at the Middle East as just the enemy. If we remember, 2001, Americans didn't care much for the Middle East. Come to find out that was all basically a sham, and there's a lot of, other aspects to that. But for the large part, the Syrian conflict has been going on for, over 10 years at this point. And like we're going to be talking about, there's a lot of players vying for power. Syria is rated one of the worst. Yeah, I agree. And that's key right there. Like, people are living in tents in a destroyed place. I think that we need to start helping our own here. I think that if we don't, then it's not going to go well. But I think that tide's going to start turning now that we're getting the old guard out, and hopefully we can cut off the Ukraine money fund and start funneling some of that money back into our own communities, into our own resources, our own networks. That's getting off topic, but I think personally with the Syrian conflict, and I think what worries me the most is, can Giuliani be trusted? Can Giuliani be trusted? That's the major point of this, because a lot of times these rebels, they get to they remove the old guard, right? They remove the old, and they come in with the new, but the new sometimes is just as bad, if not worse, than what the old guard was. So I think we're going to have to keep a major eye on that one.
Well, you remember, most of us remember, because it happened relatively recently within the last couple of years. We all remember when the United States pulled out of Afghanistan.
Yes, a disaster.
The Taliban moved in, took over everything very quickly, and said initially, "Oh yeah, we want to work with the world stage. We want things to be different."
I've heard people talking about that.
We're going to pledge to be more equal. And now, in Afghanistan, women aren't allowed to go to school anymore. They have to wear the coverings. It's gone right back to how it was. It's gone right back to the extreme semi-dark ages for a lot of people. And they said that they weren't going to at the beginning, and clearly, and you sent me, Rob, you sent me the link to the transcription of the speech that Giuliani made when he was pronouncing victory, and a lot of the language he used was very similar, very close similar to Islamic State kind of stuff. Very extreme, very like, we're gonna purify the country, we're gonna do this, and it's worrying. And the issue at stake with all of this is that this is something that it was a problem. It was a problem that didn't need fixed the way it's being fixed.
Agreed.
The Syrian civil war started, as you said, it started roughly in 2011 when Bashir Assad, he clamped down really hard on protests
Yep.
that were happening because of the pro-democracy
Yeah.
movement in that part of the world, which happened in most of the countries that experienced the Arab Spring.
Yeah.
They don't
Egypt
like
was
to
one of
talk
them.
about it. A lot of people don't like to acknowledge the fact that the Arab Spring was a colossal failure.
Yes, agreed.
Most of those
Agreed.
protests, most of those people got executed.
Yeah.
Like, most of those people aren't around anymore, and you don't hear
Or
anything about
went
it.
into exile. Yeah.
Yeah, it looked like, oh yeah, they're fighting for their freedom, and then they got crushed.
Yeah.
Can I
just
ask for
about
confirmation
everywhere.
on something?
Yeah. What's up?
I actually heard that one of the reasons the rebels stopped protesting is because they were, I don't know how to word this so we don't get in trouble, doing bad things to children
Yeah.
in some of those places.
A lot of times that happened. One thing I want to touch on, because it fascinates me. I study Islam. I'm still studying Islam. I find it fascinating. What I don't understand is there is a period of time where Islam was like the enlightened belief. You know, you had the house of wisdom, you had the house of knowledge, you had all of this like insane ability
Russia.
coming from the Islamic world at the time, very advanced. You know, the mathematics was almost second to none, right? And then we go back into a dark ages aspect with these Islamic states, because I think we have, if we, you can't say all Islam is bad, because I don't believe that, especially when we look at things like Sufism, which is more of the mystic aspect of Islam, the whirling dervishes and the powers of prayer and things like that, you know. But you have these Sunnis that just, and these Shiites, and they don't get along. And maybe you could take that to the same thing as like Baptists and Lutherans, but it's on a violent level. You know, I've never seen a Baptist beat up a Lutheran. I'm sure it's happened. I'm sure those kinds of things happen. But for me, it's got to be something somewhere along the line, some wires got crossed. Because if you read about the Islamic world in, let's say, you know, the 800s or the 700s, it was very advanced. They were making new inventions. They didn't treat women like Afghanistan does. Afghanistan's a crazy place. We left, and here's the thing, and I was hoping Spider would also put this in there.
Okay.
We left all of our weapons, we left all of our tanks, we left all of our supplies, because at the time the general said it's cheaper to leave it there. That sounds like, to me, you are leaving that there
for the
to start a
terrorists.
problem. To start a problem.
Yes.
To
I was
start
waiting
a
for this
problem.
part. Yes.
Now, this gets into where I said
ISIS.
earlier we're going to be connecting a lot of dots here. At least I think I have a pretty good theory about where this is going, and I can always be wrong, so this is just my
Same.
personal theory on it.
I have one too.
So, and this might take like a few minutes, so bear with me to get through all of it.
We got you.
But let's look at some of the headlines that I've been looking at the last week or two to start off with, just to get a baseline of where we're at. As soon as all this stuff happened, right? As soon as all this stuff happened, at least two groups, two countries were ready. One of them was Israel, because the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, started slamming places on their border with Syria. They took over a place called Syrian Hermon. They struck a suspected chemical weapons factory. Later on, they on December 10th, just a few days ago, they claimed to have completely destroyed Syria's naval fleet. Like, just boom, done.
Yeah, wiped them out.
And you can't just do that on a whim.
No.
You have to have been prepared, which means they were watching for this situation to happen, which means there possibly was some communication going on here.
100%.
Along with Israel, who one more thing about them, they've struck Syria 480 times just in the last week.
48 hours is all they did 48 hours, they destroyed damn near everything. And I want to say something before you continue, because I think this is important. They also breached basically what would be a buffer zone.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't supposed to go
They
into
took it
the
over.
buffer zone.
They took
and
over
they
the
took
buffer
it
zone.
over.
Yep.
Yes,
The Golan
yes,
Heights.
They took over the Golan Heights, which is where one Al Julani is actually from. So that's something else to keep in mind as we go through this.
And that buffer zone has been in place for 50 years.
50 years.
50 years
yep.
since the first members of the Assad family took over, basically.
Yes. Yep.
And so that's super interesting. But along with them, who else started striking targets in the name of fighting back against the Islamic State? The United States.
Yep, the United States was another one.
Immediately started just nailing targets like all across the country. And the thing about all that is that the Islamic State largely exists because of the United States, because of the boogeyman that's out in that region. And we're going to get to that in another few minutes, because this is all leading to that. Prior to this conflict going on and just popping off in Syria, you had Israel going after Hezbollah,
right?
Basically destroying them, right? You had Israel going after Hamas, basically destroying them almost. Both of those groups are so damaged, I don't know how they're going to be able to recover. You have in Yemen, we've been fighting the Houthi or the Houthi, however you say it, the extremist rebels there for quite a while. Obama was dropping drones on them pretty indiscriminately, so a lot of innocent people got killed there. And a lot of this occurred because a lot of these people have two main allies, one that's in the region and one that isn't. The one that isn't is Russia. Russia was helping supply a lot of these people to keep them strong for whatever reason, mostly as a buffer to the United States. Russia's busy in Ukraine, which is another thing that the United States had a hand in, and that's the reason it's in the place it is. But it drew Russia's attention. They're busy pouring money, pouring all the stuff into the Ukraine. So there's a power vacuum here. Who is the other big player that relied on all of these little militias and rebel groups and all these other people around Israel? Iran.
Yeah.
And now Iran has next to no direct power in that region at all.
At all.
Which is a huge deal. And it shows me, at least, if I'm looking at it from a big picture perspective, that that's really who the United States is after this whole time.
Yes.
That everybody else in between is just pieces on the board. Even Ukraine and Russia is essentially, in the long term, a meaningless conflict. And we're pouring money into it to keep it going, to keep Russia's attention, while we battle with Iran on this shadow stage. And we've just hit a tipping point.
Yeah, agreed.
And
agreed.
It's frustrating to me because during the first Trump administration, he didn't want to get involved in any sort of conflicts, which, I agree with. I don't want to get involved in anything else. He wanted to pull us out from different places. He pulled out roughly 2,500 troops from Syria at the time. And now he's taking the same stance. He's saying, oh, no, I don't want to have anything to do with it. So when I come in, I'm just going to let them deal with it. The issue there is that we've already messed it up. The United States already screwed it up, beyond everything else.
Yes.
We're kind of really heavily responsible for it now.
Yes.
That's how I feel.
You can't just take a hands-off approach anymore because the people before you screwed the whole place up.
That right there is exactly why I was saying we should go take control earlier.
But even then, now you've got all these other people who've been fighting to keep foreign influence out of their country and out of their region and out of the continent. So
they wouldn't be very happy with us.
They don't want us there. They've never wanted us there because we're their to protect United States interest. We're not there to protect their interests as much as we say, oh yeah, we're here to help the people, but we didn't help very much in Afghanistan.
They
The
know
whole reason
better.
we were there was to prepare them to defend themselves. And when
Yes.
we left, they were like, okay, and they rolled over because they didn't get taught anything.
Yes.
They didn't know how to defend themselves. They didn't even take the weapons that we left behind. They left those for the people moving in. They rolled
So
over.
that was under the Biden administration, right? If I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
yeah. And that's really the tragedy of all that.
Which
Not
really
that
isn't
he pulled
surprising.
out, because we wanted to pull out of there anyway.
But we wanted to train them to be adequately enough to be able to fight against that. And you know, with Biden, who I don't think was really the president the whole time to begin with, but that's a whole nother conversation for another day. Fumbled it. And you know, I have to say, thank goodness that Harris didn't get this, because I feel like if she would have won, this would have been a shit show like no other. Pardon my language, but you know, it's my whole thing is this: I have no issue with anyone in the Middle East. You've never done me wrong. You've never done me dirty. I think there's a rich culture over there, and I think the United States wants to be the big dick swinging state over there. I think exactly. I think we want so bad to control the world, especially, you know, if we can control where history was born, at least in this cycle of time, then we are golden, right? We can do whatever we want. But I think that this, like you said, Spider, is a major tipping point. Iran losing that much power, you know, the Ayatollah, I watched his speech the other day.
I was just going to bring that up as my last closing point, that he says basically what I've said. He came right out and said he says it's a plot by the United States, Israel, and an unnamed Syrian neighbor. He said that there was somebody else nearby that is involved in it. It could be Qatar, could be somebody, I don't know. I haven't looked real close at who else is real close by around all there, but he's right out. He's like, hey, it's the U.S. They're but because we've made them out to be the boogeyman, we've made them out to be bad. People here are thinking, oh yeah, well no, it's not us. It's you, the bad guys. Obviously, we're America. We're gonna put our boot in your ass, you know, that kind of thing. So I was gonna bring up that song.
That's such an
usually
obnoxious
the bad
song.
guys.
Like,
there's no good guys on the world stage. There is no good guys.
Definitely not in war.
No, but war is necessary because war brings peace. You can't have peace without war, and when you get comfortable, things happen. In terms of Iran, we have a good friend. Me and Spider have a good friend in Iran, and not in Tehran, which is like the, you know, but and in Shiraz, and I worry about them all the time because they crack down on journalism. They crack down on, you know, the Islamic rule isn't nice. It's not a good one. Anytime you have a religion that can rule an entire group, because I don't even think Christianity should rule, and I myself believe, you know, I'm a Christian. I don't think Christianity should rule. I think if you have somebody that uses religion as a ruling tool, it creates corruption, it creates dictatorship, it creates evil. And so to me, you know, while I don't think the Ayatollah is a great human being, I don't think he's too far off from the truth as well. I 100% think, you know, we want to be, like I said before, we want to have the biggest measuring stick in the world. Okay. Well, our government does. I don't, but the government wants to have, we want to swing it around like it's that power. And so, you know, the key players in this, I think, are the United States and Iran. I don't think Russia is a key player. I think everybody thinks Russia is, but I think
their economy has been tanked for so long. Again, because of us and the United Nations.
Yes.
Basically sanctioning every single thing that they do. That Russia is pretty destitute, to be honest. Like, it doesn't come out much.
Yeah.
But they, for a country that large, they are ridiculously poor, and it's not necessarily their own fault.
I think Americans are funny, right? People hear the word Russia and they get shivers down their spine because the baby boomer generation
World
was
War II.
instilled, well, Cold War more so, not World War II.
Okay, yeah, that's
Was
what I meant. My bad.
instilled with Russia is the bad man. Russia's the bad man. Watch out for the Reds. The Reds scare. They're gonna get you. Communism's coming to get you. It's gonna get you. And
Like
so
in the Fallout games.
they were brainwashed to think that Russia was the big bad boogeyman.
They got to me. I don't know any better.
Which was never the case. And so after the Cold War, when Reagan told Gorbachev tear down the wall and it looked like things were starting to work out, there's always been mild tension between the United States and Russia because of the Cold War, because of the after effects of World War II. Stalin was a monster, though. No matter what anybody says, he was a monster.
Yeah.
But America has a weird fear of Russia. It's a weird fear. Americans think that Russia is just this giant warmongering country, when in reality, we're the giant warmongering country. We are the giant war. But you know what? That's what you do. You shine the light on somebody else so nobody else sees what you are doing. If you have, and this is the thing, like, and at this point, I don't care if people cancel us. I don't give a shit. We're going to start talking the truth. We're going to start telling the truth, and we're going to start being out here. I have no problem with Russia. Russia never did nothing to me. Our own government has done far worse to us than Russia has ever done to anybody in the United States currently.
Tuskegee Project.
The Tuskegee
Agent
Project.
Orange during the Vietnam War.
All of it.
I'll still maintain that Russia would never have marched into Ukraine if we hadn't stuck our nose in their business with the pipeline.
Facts.
But we put the pressure on Germany to shut down the pipeline that they were trying to build through the area and left them no choice. They were like, you know what? This is straight up like stopping us from something that is the lifeblood of our country. This is going to stop the cash flow that we need to improve our people and to improve everything. And so we're going to hit you where it hurts because everybody's been funneling money through the Ukraine. And that's what it was for. You hear about all this like corruption stuff. Yeah. They had a huge corruption trial in the Ukraine, which led to why Zelensky is in power now.
Yes.
Because the previous guy was laundering money. Who was helping him launder money? The United States, Europe, a lot of those guys, because they wanted to keep the money away from Russia because it's a buffer state with Russia. That's all that anybody considers the Ukraine. They don't care about the Ukraine, which is why all this stuff about sending money there, it boggles my mind, and people fall for it all the time. Do I feel bad for the people in Ukraine? Sure. Of course. You know what? They didn't ask for this. They didn't want this. It's not their fault.
It's not their fault. No, it's
the governments along the chain. And if we had not stuck our nose in that pipeline business, left it alone, Russia would never have moved in. Russia would never have left Syria. None of this was likely to have happened the way that it happened.
Agreed.
But it was all a calculated series of steps.
Yes. I think Syria was going to happen regardless. I think Bashar al-Assad,
because there's too many.
Yeah, I think it's basically it's very much reminds me of the different dictatorships that we've seen in South America that got overthrown. I think there was a boiling point. You get to a point where a lot of times people's brothers, wives, husbands were kidnapped, taken by the government, put into Sindaya prison and other prisons like it. At some point, that reaches to a boil. You have these people that are living in opulence. You have Bashar al-Assad and his wife living in opulence. His father, Hamza al-Assad, basically was the same. And you saw what they did to his grave. They disrespected it in a way that I've never seen, but well-deserved. You can't be that wicked as a ruler, and then when you get overthrown, start crying about it. Now, what I think is going to be interesting is how Russia is going to react to having Bashar al-Assad. I think if Syria shows a unity and a power alignment, I could definitely see Vladimir Putin using Bashar al-Assad as a bargaining tool. saying,
heard a lot
"Hey,
of people say that.
we'll give you Bashir al-Assad, but work with us on this." And maybe Giuliani does that. Maybe he says, "Okay, well," because then they would just hang Bashir al-Assad in the square. Do I think that? Do I think that's the right thing to do? It's a tough call. I'm not a Syrian. I didn't go through what they've went through.
And
You know?
Syria, the whole reason that the regime began in the 70s was because Syria, for a long time, has never really been a unified country. It's been city
No.
states,
Yeah.
and they've all been the way that they've been, and they fought with each other constantly for hundreds of thousands of years. And so the Assad regime became powerful enough with foreign backing to consolidate under a dictatorship, because they felt that was the only way to bring peace to the country. Now, on the one hand, you could say, well, okay, that's kind of a good thing, but instead of using that to bring the country together and to work towards bringing everybody together on the same page, they just clamped down continuously ever after to keep themselves in charge and to keep the war from breaking out again. So the whole civil war thing is basically a return to how the country was before the regime came in, because there were so many different, and they're all religious factions. They're all the different Islamic sects that don't like each other for whatever reason. And now all those floodgates are open again.
Yeah, and so you're going to have a series of, I think, smaller skirmishes taking place. And I wouldn't be surprised if Iran and Russia backed some of these factions. And I wouldn't be all that surprised if the United States and Israel backed certain factions, because that's what we do. The United States has been backing factions forever. Look at Osama bin Laden. The United States trained him. They trained him for the Afghan war.
Proxy wars.
Yes, and we are involved in so many proxy wars.
That's what's about to happen in Syria right now. Am I understanding that correctly? A bunch of proxy wars?
Yes, it's going to be, yes.
Metal Gear Solid 4 is happening in real life right now.
Probably, yeah. I definitely think that this could take two turns. I do want to see Iran get away from their Islamic rule. I think that we had no business messing around in Iran in the 70s. See, a lot of people don't get the United States, once again, sticking their nose where it didn't belong in the 70s. Jimmy Carter's presidency and then Reagan's issue. That's the problem. We got involved where we didn't belong. Once again, the United States we are not the police of the world. And it's high damn time we realize that. I think with Harris as president, it would have been business as usual. We'd have been funneling money to the Ukraine. And it wouldn't surprise me if people like Harris, people like Biden, Obama, Bush, all of them, honestly, Trump included, maybe have some sort of foreign money involved in these places. You never should trust a politician. In my personal opinion, never trust a politician, because they'll tell you what you want to hear and then not give you a single thing of what you need. Yep. So for me, they'll
do what they want.
And I think the one thing too that I've noticed, recently the CEO of United Healthcare was assassinated by a person. I'm not going to say his name. I'm not going to give him no fame. It's still a crime. And people are saying this guy is a hero. You're not a hero, dude. You committed a crime. Nonetheless,
you can't just walk up to somebody in the street and just
and start blasting. No, you cannot.
I mean, that could have been anybody. It could have been that guy. It could have been somebody who was head of a children's hospital who was saving lives. It could have been, I know in the background this guy is in charge of a business. It's kind of a scummy business because the insurance business sucks. I would 100% agree with you. Insurance is ridiculously awful.
Shitty. Yeah, it's terrible.
But you can't just walk up to people and just take them out that way, because
that's a slippery slope.
Anybody can see that and decide, oh, you know what? That
Yes.
worked out for him. I'm going to do that to the people I don't like. I'm going to do that to the people I don't like. And it's just going to be a
Anarchy.
thing. Like,
Yeah. And here's the
and
thing. What that's
how
done,
we get anarchy.
that took away from the Syrian conflict, because I see the headlines, right? But I don't see anybody talking about Syria. I see everybody going, "Oh my God, that guy's a hero. He did good." You bumbling buffoons. If
I've
you
seen
think
people
that
talking
guy,
about that.
he probably didn't do it. He might have done it. Everybody's a fall guy at some point when you get to the higher up elites. I think all that was a smokescreen. Syria happens. Nobody gives a shit about Syria. People care about the Ukraine because they'll show images of children. They'll do this, but they won't do that for Syria, right? They'll just talk about Bashir al-Assad. They'll talk about Giuliani. They'll talk about all of the major key players, Iran, but they won't show you the children that have suffered. They won't show you the people that have suffered unless you go looking for it. Like I did on YouTube. I wanted to see these prisons. I want to see what the hell was going on with society. Which leads him to believe that, that's the key thing going on right now. That is the major thing going on. The thing that they're not trying to yell too much about
Is
is
one you
what's
should be paying
going
attention
on.
to.
Yes. Yes.
Here's a fun fact too, by the way. And I don't want
Ooh, a
people
fun
to
fact.
think that I'm excusing
I love fun
the
facts.
brutality of the Assad regime, because it did do a lot of terrible things for a
100%,
good number
yes.
of years
Yes.
before the Civil War happened. But on the flip side, because they enforced certain things in the country, Syria before the Civil War had one of the highest rates of education in the Middle East. It had 100% primary school enrollment and 70% of children attending secondary school, which is going into high school and things like that.
Yeah.
And according to the 2004 census, the literacy rate in Syria was 79.6%, which is pretty darn good for that area
Correct.
of the
I
world.
think
I'm not
that's
saying
more
that there are
than
people who
America.
I'm not saying that people out there don't know how to read and they're all dumb or anything like that, because that's
Right.
not true. I'm saying that literacy has to be taught and it has to be something you reinforce. And 86% of men and 73.6% of women, which is a huge number of women,
Yes.
as opposed to many other areas of the Islamic world, were literate, not just able to read,
Yes.
but able to read, write, do all that kind of stuff. And after the Civil War started, all that went in the garbage.
I want to.
Nobody goes to school anymore. The
No.
rates plummeted. Everything went out the window.
Is that because of the Sharia law?
No, that's because the United States got involved. Because if you educate a society and they realize what's going on, they're not going to stand for it. I want to point something out too. Libya was the same way. The education system was high. Gaddafi wanted his people to learn. Gaddafi wanted Africa to have its own currency. He wanted the African nations to have their own currency, to get away from Europe, to get away from China, to get away from people that were basically taking from Africa, because that's what they do. China especially. They go
China's
there and they
rolled
take
on
diamonds.
through,
they'll steamroll.
They made deals. They'd be like, "Oh yeah, we'll make you these roads and all this other, get you connected," which they're great roads, but then they're gonna take and take.
They'll take everything.
After that.
Yeah. But guess who stuck his nose in that? Obama jumped in with everybody else and went and destroyed that country. Now it's one of the countries that still has slave auctions. They have slave auctions in Libya. Shit that shouldn't even be a thing in this day and age.
And you don't hear anything about Libya
got
these
involved.
days.
No,
you heard,
because
at most you heard there was a terrorist organization going through there. Was that where Boko Haram was, or were they?
Yep, that was Boko Haram. Yeah,
they started sweeping through, and they're connected with the Islamic State. They said, "Oh yeah, we love the Islamic State. We're whatever," and they started sweeping through there, and nobody's ever found any of those kidnapped people.
No,
what about the 200 kids that got stolen from the school? They never got them back.
Never.
And nobody talks about them anymore. They're just, oh, well, I guess that happened, and then that was it. Like, it's kind of ridiculous where our priorities are.
Because as Americans, we're taught that Africa is a very dirty place, and that Africa doesn't really matter. which it actually does. If we were in a one world government, which would only work if we had planetary involvement where we could go to another planet and it was a non-corrupt system.
Project
right?
Bluebeam.
But Africa has enough land that it could grow enough food for the world multiple times over. You would not have hungry people. That's how big Africa is. Africa is basically the cradle of civilization. Like that is where you would get the food.
They don't want that. They want us to be forced to buy their stuff.
Of course.
I don't know if this is related or not, but you just reminded me. I was actually looking on a bag of grapes I was eating yesterday, and it is illegal, literally illegal, to take the stems and seeds from the grapes and grow your own.
Mm-hmm.
It's illegal to collect rainwater.
Yeah.
All the seeds and all the strains of fruits and vegetables grown in the United States are proprietary. They're owned.
Yeah.
They're patented.
You're licensing your grapes.
Yep. It's crazy to think about. You don't think about that. And so you can't just grow your own tomatoes. All the big farms that are out there have to pay.
Corporate owned.
Because.
I mean, legally.
Yeah, I'm going to do it regardless. You know,
well,
I'm going to do something about it.
If you're growing it for yourself and you're not like feeding a community, they're not going to pay too much attention. But
I've
as soon as you try to sell it.
onions a few times. Come at me, bro.
As soon as you try to sell it, that's when they're on a large scale. Like if you had a large industrial farm you were trying to start up and you were just using seeds that you got, they're not going to let you. You have to be part of the agricultural programs because they own everything.
Which in some ways I get. Okay. There should be some
for regulatory purposes.
There should be regulatory aspects.
Like you have to pay the government for your own land.
You don't want like rat droppings and things like that getting in with your food and people get sick.
Have you ever heard of the FDA dietary guidelines?
But I'm saying, like, if we were really doing this the food pyramid was proven to be a goofy thing, anyways. Yeah. But I think I love the United States.
No, I'm talking about the dietary defects.
That I am so critical of my own country.
There's
because
quite a lot of rat poop in your coffee. That's all I'm saying.
Right, because I love my country.
Not my coffee.
Yes, your coffee.
I love my country enough to where I want to criticize it so it can get better. I'm not doing this as some edgelord that hates being here. You know,
that's my job.
I think that we are blessed to live in this country, because we can sit here and talk about this right now, and I'm not going to get kidnapped in the middle of the night by the government unless I know a little too much. But they ain't coming for me.
Because if you know too much, then they'll know better than to kidnap you, because it'll only prove your conspiracy is correct.
There you go.
Usually they'll hire you for something if you know too much. Yeah, and then you're part of the problem.
There you go.
Then you're part of the problem.
Listen, and anybody could become part of that problem. You know, I think one of the most hypocritical things a person in the United States says is "eat the rich." I think that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard, because you would give your left whatever to have that kind of money, and if you say you wouldn't, I damn liar.
I straight up admit it. Not even to deny it.
I love my country, just like the Syrians love their country, just like the Russians love their country, just like the Iranians love their country. And this is what I.
Does that make me Japanese?
Yes. But my thing is this, and we'll close out here because next week we're going to go into the historical aspect of Syria to tie this all together, because I think this is a 2-hour show. This is a 2-hour show, and I want to get into the historical aspects of Syria too, because I think that's going to be a key player in where Syria moves next. And then I think the week after that, we're going to get into the Ukrainian-Russian conflict, because I think that needs to be discussed. I think we need to start being the voice that tells the truth, not a bunch of bullshit that were heard on CNN or Fox News or whatever news major outlet. We need to start being that.
All that fake news.
And all the time we were talking about not talking about politics, I think it's high time we start talking about politics. Now, this is something I want to say, and I think it's really important to say. If I was a person in the Middle East and another country came into my area and tried to take over my land, you're damn right I'm going to fight for it. If you take out my children and my wife, you're damn right I'm going to join an organization, and I'm going to do everything in my power to destroy everything you're going to build or have
Root of
built.
most of the problems. It's the
I
root of most of
cannot
the
be
problems.
upset when the United States creates terrorists. Our country
I was waiting for it.
creates terrorists. And if you think we do not, your head is in the sand.
We're the number one leading cause in terrorism.
And then the war on terror was a failure, just like the war on drugs. That's a fact.
Drugs won.
Drugs
Yep.
won.
Drugs won. If you look
Definitely.
at
Listen,
Oregon.
I mean, we invented
we-
drugs.
well, no,
they legalized everything in Oregon.
and listen, Oregon's talking about making everything illegal again because,
no.
because that's how bad that
yeah,
turned out.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
that's
no.
a great idea. Oh, it's really not that great of an idea.
Whoops, we bungled.
Let's not
Oh,
get so
no.
high all the time.
I want to say something else too. For those of you that have enjoyed our shows previous, we thank you. We're going to move into a new era of this Uncanny Earth because I feel it's time. I feel like we have something here. We have lightning in a bottle, and we need to stop messing around. We need to start putting our actual opinions out there. And if it offends people, I don't care. I don't care if it offends you. I'm not
That's
here.
why there's so many billions of people here. Go find someone that doesn't offend you.
I'm not here to placate to your emotions. I'm here to tell the damn truth, and it's about damn time we started doing so. So, gentlemen, I thank you. We're going to get this. We're going to really make this shit happen. I'm glad Spider was excited. I haven't seen Spider excited about a show in a long time.
Oh, all this stuff got me fired up. Like I
Fired
started connecting all these like lines and dots and stuff. Was like, I was like, oh my gosh, there's something big going on here. We got to talk about it.
I didn't get to connect mine, but next week I'm going to connect how the past and everything there, because Damascus is very close to Mount Hermon, and Mount Hermon is where Semyaza and his people came down, and it's very close to Elba and the Elba tablets, and it's also very close to Tel Mardik, the supposed grave of Abel. So it's going to get wild in here because I don't think the vying for power and everything going awry there for years and years and years is all a coincidence. So anyways, gentlemen, where can we find you guys? Spider, what you got going on? Tell us what you got going on.
Well, I'm still trucking along. I took a break from the Final Fantasy franchise to play some Indiana Jones in the Great Circle, which is a pretty good game. Don't listen to the naysayers.
I love it. I love it.
There are people who got mad.
Tell me one
of,
thing.
No.
Tell me
It's
one
amazing.
thing.
Yes,
Is
you can
Indiana
win people.
Jones still a man?
Well, yeah, he's Indiana Jones.
Okay, thank you.
No,
That's all I
know
care
what-
about.
he identifies
All that stuff that people
he
came up with.
identifies as non-binary now.
Because I heard a bunch of rumors, and I'll just leave it at that.
I don't know where everybody
no,
came
it's
up
great.
with all that, but it's a great game.
Okay.
We were
It's
talking about it
great.
on stream. He
Yeah.
popped into the
I jumped
comments
in.
on the stream last night, and I was
Listen.
talking about it. So
I am literally just walking around picking fights with Nazis and punching them out. It makes me feel great. I just walk around, I do my little German accent. I'm like, oh, look
real
at-
Nazis and real fascists,
Nazis.
not the fake
not
ones
the
that
fake
people claim to
Nazis
see
and
walking
fascists
around here.
that the boogeyman comes to get you at night.
Um,
It's a great
but,
game. I love it. It's a great game.
I've been playing that, and
Good call.
once I get my leveling up done, I'll go back to finish Final Fantasy V, and then go on to 6. I got 6, 7, 8, and 9 to do. 4 more games at least.
Yeah, good call.
And at some point, I'm also going to try to find out, because I got this game for $3.50.
I should end the show right now for this bullshit.
I'm going to see just how bad is it. Suicide
Oh, no.
Squad kills the Justice.
Oh no!
How bad is it? I don't know. But for $3.50,
I picked it up too. I
I
also
don't think
did.
I'll be able to complain, because that's
Yeah.
a ridiculously terrible price for it.
Yep.
If
I
it's
did
bad,
too.
like so bad that I hate it, I'm not
Look,
going to feel bad.
I'm
'cause
probably not even gonna
$3.50.
play it. I just picked it up because I have a problem with 80% to 90% Steam
Listen,
sales.
they're shutting it down in another month
I
anyway.
just
Like it's going to be offline. So
It'll be even
just-
better then.
I just bought a game called Mars for 99 cents on the
Okay.
Xbox store.
I bought
I
a
think
game
I have
called
that.
I Am Everything.
99 cents.
is that Mars Warlogs or something
It's
like that?
It's a 360 game. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm gonna get Vanquish, I think, because Vanquish was cool. I think I'm gonna get Vanquish as well. So
But yeah, got that
Awesome.
going on.
Excellent.
Got
Love to hear
Spirits
it.
Club stuff going on.
Love to
I've
hear it.
got episodes of my podcast going on, which is
Love to
there's
hear it.
two of them. There's the kid-friendly one,
Oh, you
and
got
there's
two
the
of them.
grown-up one.
Hmm.
The grown-up one I talked about this last time. I talked about something controversial. What did I talk about?
With the election?
I've been talking about stuff from that. So if you want to
Good.
hear my
You should.
unfiltered thoughts on some of that, like tonight's episode here, that's
Good,
where I
damn
talk a
right.
lot about that.
About time we started getting
Um,
it.
but yeah, so that's up there. So a lot of stuff going on. There's always new content. Spider does things on YouTube.
Go check it out. What do you got going on, Deadpool? When you gonna get back to Black Myth Wukong?
Whenever I get my house, they're supposed to drag him out on the 17th.
That's
Supposedly.
what I like to hear.
However
we'll
that
down,
works.
We'll come down there and drag him out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
whatever.
on Saturday for my spin-off show with the intern, I
First
think I'm gonna be talking about the 01 AI that tried to break out. Teaser.
Like
They said that about, if I remember correctly, the video I was watching about it the other day said that about 20% of the AIs are now able to not only defy the developers, but also lie about what they're doing to the developers. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So I'm going to look into that and see if I can tie that in with the Elon Musk robots. Because I don't understand. I know you love him. Rob. But I got to ask. I don't understand why this man is giving the AI all the tools they need to take over the world when he claims to be so scared of it.
I don't necessarily love the man, but his concept of going to Mars, I think, is because nobody's had this. Nobody's out here screaming, "Let's go to Mars," but he is. And for me, that is
like,
why
I'm conflicted. I'm personally conflicted because I'm like, I can agree with that. There's some things he says that are really cool, but then there's other things that are like, what did you just say?
But
nobody's 100% perfect.
But he's a human. He's a human being.
True.
Like,
true.
Right. But he can land a rocket remotely. Can we do that? No. No, the frugal Hoosier, we cannot. So
yeah, I'm gonna see if I'll figure out what that's all about.
I do like a couple of the cabinet picks that I've seen for the Trump administration. I think Tulsi Gabbard is probably one of my personal favorites.
Doge.
A Democrat that was actually served in war. So she's seen firsthand how war is. And that's important for me because we need more people that have been in that situation if they're going to make decisions regarding those kinds of things.
It only makes sense.
I don't want some yahoo just hanging around, just being,
I just can't get over the Doge department.
He did that to troll people.
I know.
100%. And yes. I love it. I think it's going to be. I think we're in for a pretty decent 4 years.
Yep.
If I had to be perfectly honest,
right.
I'm still gonna kind of keep my eyes open because
as we should. Yeah. I agree.
I don't trust. At this point, I don't trust anything until it actually comes through, and then we'll see where it goes from there. So.
Last closing statement from me.
Yes.
I'm not trying to actually get into it this time. Maybe on our next episode.
Yes.
But I have been paying attention with all the refugee stuff going on in Syria right now, and they're a lot of them are about to get dislocated, and our own immigration stuff going on. I heard a rumor now that supposedly a bunch of the blue states have said they're not going to go along with the deportation stuff, and Trump said he was going to enable martial law and just go in there and force them to.
Yeah,
so
because
I'm going to be keeping an eye on that.
The Fed listen, just because they legalized marijuana, that's a state. The Fed can come in and say, nope, it's illegal.
Yeah, there's been a lot of problems with that, actually.
The Fed overrules the states.
Yeah.
The Fed overrules the states.
In most cases, there's a big push for states' rights, and some areas are that's what needs to be defined.
I agree.
I think that's one of the things that needs to be defined is
it's very complicated.
Where's the exact line between the state rights and when the federal says no, you have to do things by the federal? Because there is a definitive line there. It's just been lost and buried and miscommunicated.
And let me say this: if you're not here legally, get out. I don't want you here. And before anybody starts clutching their pearls and getting upset, go to another country. Please go to the Middle East and try to overstay your welcome. Please go to go to Japan and overstay your welcome. Do it.
They'll throw you in prison.
Ask
Do it.
Johnny Somali how he feels about
Oh, okay. The South Korean president.
That's all I'm saying
Yeah.
about that. We're not going to get into it. We're going to go way too long if we do that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Please
ask what happens
please
when
go
you go to
a
another
whole
country.
ass other country and overstay your welcome. Do it.
FAFO.
Yeah,
That's what
I
happened.
love
to
to
Johnny
hate that,
Somali.
man.
Find out. F around.
I love
and
to hate
find
that, man.
out.
That's what happened, and he's going to be in prison for a
They got
long-
people. They
Yeah.
literally have people chasing him down with bounties.
Yes.
Not anymore.
Like-
he's in jail. Like they
Okay.
have
Got
him.
it. Yeah,
He's,
they
he's,
got it.
he's in
Nice.
South Korean prison right now, and they're
Yeah, they
charging
got it.
him.
Beautiful.
And he's going to
Beautiful.
be there
Yes.
for at least a
Come on,
minimum
Ever?
of 10 years is what the goal,
Yes.
what
Yeah,
the
like-
estimate is.
I love it
But
though.
that's a whole
That's
other
what
thing.
he gets.
But that's what happens when you go to other countries and you
Yep.
find out.
yeah.
F around and find out.
Yep.
You play by the
No.
rules or you don't. This is the
Yes.
only country where you can get away with not playing by the rules most
Listen,
of the time.
if you go to somebody else's house and it's time to leave, get out. I mean,
Or
just
you
in
spill
general.
a taco on their floor.
Well, that's okay. You know, that if
Spill
you're
some sub sandwich on their door.
No, that's something
Yep.
else that
That
went
was
in
some
the door.
vomit.
Yep.
That was some vomit.
That was some vomit. All right.
All right, that's a good line to
Shows
close
went
on.
too long. Join us next week. We're going to talk more about Syria. The week after that, we're going to talk about the Russia-Ukraine crisis. We're going to get into some of that stuff. We're going to start tackling some major headlines in the news. We're going to talk politics. If you don't like it, don't listen to the show. I don't care. It's time to stop messing around. We have been working our asses off on this show, and if you want to be here, be here. If not, hit the door and don't let the door hit you where
That
the
almost
good
got
Lord
ruined.
hit you. That almost
It's
That
got
almost
normally
got ruined.
Spider having the word mumbles.
I'm just excited
Good
'cause
job, Spider.
I found our niche. All right, y'all. Y'all have a good night. As always, why be boring when you can be uncanny? Y'all better be here next week. Peace. End stream.